So, hello everyone. Alan Barton with Discover Games. Hadn't done a video in a while, but back to it. I hopefully get some more. But I'm very excited to once again get me back in the groove doing these videos. I have Tom and Sam with the new Kickstarter, Unforgiven, Green Feet Games, and I'll let you guys go ahead and introduce yourself. Tom.
Hi, everybody. Glad to be here. I'm Tom Butler. I'm the owner of Green Feet Games, and this is our fourth game that we have released. And our motto pretty much is, how do you make the learning of history fun and compelling? Well, you do that through the medium of board games. So that's my impetus for what I'm trying to bring out to the world. And I've been doing it now for this is the 5th year that the company's been going strong.
Sam?
All right. Hi, everyone. My name is Sam Hillier, and I'm the developer with Green Feet Games working on Unforgiven. And I'm here to talk a little bit about how we got the idea for this game, how it came out of Tom's head, and ultimately made it into the product you now see on Kickstarter.
So yeah, with that, a little Unforgiven. It's about the assassination trial of the conspirators, I guess you'd call them, with Lincoln. You know, we hear about Booth and all that stuff, but this is all the other people that were involved. And I was talking to Sam earlier, you know, that time period, you always end with Lincoln's death, then it starts afterwards. But there was a time, you know, during that what was going on, that the politics. One of my favorite books out there I read a couple of years ago is Team of Rivals. It's about Lincoln and the politics of that time. I think we miss a lot of that. You know, the Civil War, Lincoln got shot. There was a lot of stuff going on, and you mentioned the history in this game. And yeah, I would like to, you guys, there's a lot of playthroughs out there. You have done an incredible job with the Kickstarter. It's funded. The information you have on the Kickstarter page, and I'll post a link, is outstanding. But I wanted to, you know, the history of the game, the background of the game, you know, where did that come from, Tom?
So, you know, it's interesting because you never know where inspiration is going to come from. And this one actually came from, I was at United States Army War College, and my daughter, she was in high school at the time. And in the state of Pennsylvania, you have to do a historical research project, a very, very well thought out research. And believe it or not, we were looking at some conspiracy theories and some of the assassination stories, and we toured the Ford's Theater. And after I took that tour, that seed was planted, and it stayed with me for a couple of years until it was time to grow. That's pretty much where it came from, the idea. Like, this would be very interesting because, you know, Harry Truman said it best, there's nothing new in the world except the history you don't know. So my intent was to bring this history that not a lot of people know to the world.
Yeah, and you've done that. Once again, I was talking about the videos. Rado does a really good job of the playthrough, and he mentions, you know, history in a box and the rabbit hole. I was telling Sam earlier, I've already, you know, sitting here before this looking at stuff. I was off in left field and looking at some of the assassination stuff. The photo, and for the name, I forget. That he was your advisor. Help me with the name. It's in the credits.
Milan.
Dr. Rightfield.
Dr.
Yeah.
Rightfield. Okay. Yes.
The photo. I had to go find the photo of the Lincoln in the coffin, and you know, that was just like, wow. You know, right there, the history. I didn't know that until 15 minutes ago. That's outstanding. So that's cool. I mean, the people, you know, that's not aware. Once people think Booth, he did it. Well, there's a lot more going on. So Sam, looking at the mechanics, you have a lot going on in the game, but it's simple. I think it's as I mentioned earlier, I'm gambling to probably teach my wife to play, and you know, she's a gamer, but she doesn't like the games I like to play. So, but I think this easy enough. There's a lot going on. Very, what the word is. I love games that have different ways to win. You could probably play this game, I don't know how many times, and your tactics, strategies, the way the game plays out, totally different every time. So how'd you come up with that, Sam?
Yeah, so you're right. We wanted to get something that was simple, that you could just take off the shelf, deal out the cards, do a little bit of setup, and you're good to go. The sort of game where the rules are easy to remember. You know, I don't like the games where you have to, okay, let's go back in the book and remember how we play this one again, right? I wanted it to be easy, accessible. It's a quick playing game. You'll get it done in under an hour. So we wanted to make sure you could get right into it. And like you said, we wanted to have a number of different win conditions to have this sense of tension all the way through. We didn't want a game that was kind of slow and then it ramped up at the end and somebody won. We wanted tension from the get-go. And what we'll find when you play it is every choice matters. Every card that you pick, every die that you buy, every time you re-roll it, every option that you take, well, there's 3 or 4 other things that you would want to do, and they all seem like good options, but you've also got to stop me from doing my good options. So we wanted to get that tension. And part of that tension comes from having multiple ways to win. It wasn't just going to be pick your strategy and see if you can do it better than the other person. It was, can you carry out that strategy while still paying attention to what I'm doing, trying to stop me while advancing your plans, and I'm trying to do the same. So I think we hit a point where there's a lot of back and forth tug of war tension during the game. You'll be fighting over multiple fronts. You can't neglect anything, but you've also got to go deep on something. You got to commit to a plan. The other thing that I like about it that we worked hard to incorporate was the history that you mentioned at the beginning. So you said everybody knows the big characters, right? You know that John Wilkes Booth assassinated President Lincoln, but who else was involved? And I didn't know much about this going in. Like I said, I knew the headlines, but that's it. So getting a chance to see, you know, Tom had already gotten ideas for 75, 80, 90 different cards that he wanted to include, and I didn't know any of them. So we learned lots about all of the characters. And the way that we've approached history here, we didn't want this to be a textbook. We didn't want it to be long and boring and a total simulation where you always had to play out exactly how the trial went. We wanted to give players the tools to play that game that I just described, that tense back and forth duel, but also that lets them tell an historical story as they go. So as you're drafting cards, these cards are characters you've never heard of. It's Powell and his attempt to assassinate the Secretary of State. It's the medical kit that Dr. Mudd used to treat Booth on his escape. It's the map he took. And if you are familiar with the area or you live there, you'll see all of these locations. The 2 people who who killed Booth at the end of the manhunt, they're in there too. And they're not just there to be like window dressing or, you know, a place for a historical picture. When you're playing, when you're building your case, when you and I are going head to head and I'm trying to convince the jury one way and you're trying to convince them the other, I'm playing out these cards that have historical relevance, that have significance. They're people, they're artifacts, they're events of the time. And I can tell a story through playing those, right? The characters that I draft, the evidence that I appeal to, the jurors that I sway. This is a way of telling a story, right? I can tell you that these people were involved in the plot. No, don't worry about that piece of evidence. That's meaningless. What you really got to focus on is this guy's testimony. And just by the nature of the game, because it's card driven, it's going to be different every time. When you deal out the cards for another game, you'll get different cards in different orders that let you tell a different story. And like Tom said at the beginning, right, we want to use games to teach history, and there's no better way than this to do so. It just immerses you in there. It throws you in the deep end. You're surrounded by these characters. And even if you were just playing the game purely mechanically, play this, get points, get money, use that, buy this, you can't not absorb that history, right? I think we've wrapped the whole product in something that's historical and engaging.
That's cool. And watching the playthroughs, especially when, like I said, watching them, I feel like I'm almost watching a TV show, a lawyer, NCIS type show, and because you really get involved with, I think, the characters. And honestly, I haven't played the game. I said I've watched the playthroughs, read the rules, but I think it'd be easy to get engrossed in the game. And as you're playing, you know, you're going to get partial to one juror or one character. And I go back, every card I'll probably end up having to Google to find out more about So, like I said,
Well, that's the
wrapping
thing, right? We wanted to leave you tidbits, right? We
is
didn't
going to
want
be
to tell you the
awesome.
whole story of everything, but we wanted to say, hey, you've played Congressman Bingham, and there's a reference to the 14th Amendment. Oh, I didn't know that. Let's go check that out. So on the one hand, yeah, he's a card. He does a thing in the game. But on the other hand, it's a gateway. It's another rabbit hole that you can go down.
Yeah. And I can't wait to play my nephew who's a lawyer.
Just you better be prepared.
Oh, yeah, probably. I don't know. But it'd be good. Have you had lawyers play test it?
I don't know, Tom. Was any of our playtesters in the room?
Yeah, well, perhaps during the Kickstarter, because that's great. You just brought that up because we just had a stretch goal. Shameless plug here. Stretch goal release for Tabletopia. So anyone can go online right now and actually play the game and test drive it themselves. So, so not yet, but I'm sure there's going to be some folks out there that are lawyers that are going to play it.
And I'm good friends with a judge here. I might have to get him to play and see what he thinks about it from a judge point of view. So, but once again, I think we had mentioned it, but if you've ever I've been on 3 different juries. If you've never been exposed to the trial process, I was really eye-opening when my first one and I was a jury. It goes back to I was like, I wanted to ask questions. And, at the time going through we couldn't. Now I just felt like, well, they're just giving me pieces and bits. And, it's the whole, one guy says one thing, well, the other one says the opposite. And it's like, well, one of them's got to be, I don't say lying, but not telling me the truth. And I think you guys captured that court scene, that jury. And I go back, we were talking earlier, the Conspirator, which I watched, so happened back in the spring, the Robert Redford movie. I feel like, I know you guys didn't plan on using that, but I felt like I was in that movie watching and reading the rules and watching the playthrough. So I think it's gonna be really that. Did you mean for that to be a history lesson or a lesson in civics on how trials work? That especially in this case where you go back to the conspiracy theory, what really happened. I don't think anybody knows, but was that planned, Tom?
We definitely tried to get a lot of that. One of the things about a trial is that it's not just factual. It's about how that lawyer can convince you, right? Who can put on the most convincing case? And a lot of that's evidence-based, but a lot of that's also emotional, right? And appeals to all these other aspects. So when you're playing it, I'm glad you got that sense from taking a look at the game, because we wanted to get that sense of, you are trying to sway the juries, and there's the jurors that are on the board. You can watch them slowly slide towards you or get pulled further away as you make these arguments, right? It gives a nice visual representation to, I just can't convince this guy. I'm never going to get this guy to believe me. Well, maybe I should focus on these guys, right? Win them over to my side. What do they care about? They care about patriotism and national interest. Okay, so I'm going to make my argument about this and that and all of these things that will appeal to them. And maybe you're right, but I did a better job, right? I convinced them better than you, so I won, right? The facts kind of are irrelevant from who wins in a trial. And that's especially true in history, where you're not going to change the outcome. This trial happened, but you can redo it, as it were. You can, what would I have done if I could appeal to this or make a case based on that or these characters, or maybe I should have forgotten about this guy and focused only on them. I'm glad you found that sense when you were reading it. That's definitely what we were looking for in terms of that legalistic tension.
Well, I don't play my nephew, the lawyer, and see if I can out-lawyer him anyway. So, about 22 days left on the Kickstarter?
Yeah, we're up at the end of the month on Halloween.
Halloween, funded with first 2 days, I believe.
Yeah, within the first 5 hours, we definitely had a good audience up front, and a lot of folks that have definitely have a lot of Green Feet Games ambassadors that were very excited for this to launch when it did.
Well, good. Well, good. Now, I assume you're you're already planning what Sam's going to do next for you.
Well, another plug, because I've got to really, I think it's important for folks to know, either if you're a game designer, if you're a game developer, if you're just someone that enjoys the hobby, nobody does anything well by themselves. And so, and I can tell you firsthand that without Nick Avalone, who is basically all things our graphic artist, graphic design, and without Sam Hillier, this game doesn't float. It still stays in that pre-production phase. And so, you know, it's one thing to create the idea. It's another thing to you know, roll your sleeves up, put in the hard work, and turn it from that pre-production to production. And that's where they both come in. And my hat's off to them.
Well, and I'll go back
Thank you for that, Tom.
You know, this is your 4th Kickstarter, correct?
Yes.
I've seen the growth from the Pirate Republic. That was when I first got interested in your company, but I definitely see the growth and what you've done. And I'll go back to, you know, looking at the Kickstarter page, the effort and time, and, you know, the background. I definitely feel, you know, this game was going to fund. Just you've done your job. It was going to fund because you've done your background, the history, that, no pun intended, but you've done you did the footwork, and that's what makes a successful game. And like I said, you brought on sounds like the right people to help you out. So I'm excited. So anything else, you know, you want to talk about Green Feet Games or anything?
Well, we're just I'm very grateful for the opportunity for you taking time out to look a little bit, peek behind the tent, and see a little bit about the game design, see a little bit about what goes into the process for those that are interested in it. And again, just the casual gamer, for them to learn a little bit about our design process at Green Feet Games. And now I'm just very, very grateful for the opportunity to spend some time with you. I want to turn it back over to Sam.
Sam?
Yeah, thank you, Tom. I'd like to echo that same sentiment, especially the part about it being a team. Nobody can do it on their own for any sort of project, let alone something like this. One of the things I found working with Tom and Nick over the last little while on this project and on previous ones and soon to be on future ones, is that we're very collaborative, right? We can all share ideas on everything. Everybody's giving input into everything else. Nobody's siloed off in their, you know, respective domains, never to talk to anybody else. Tom's done a great job of incorporating us as a team, and that has really paid off. I mean, we're getting feedback from Nick, our designer, about, you know, he's putting together the art, the icons, the packaging, but he's also doing that with an eye to how the game's going to play. So he and I will talk a bit about how we can make a certain mechanism work. And, you know, Tom will come up with a great idea that the two of us will implement, and we'll give feedback that'll change his mind. And the three of us have done a really good job of collaborating. And I think Tom's right that if you are interested in this sort of thing, if you've got a game in your head, if you have an idea you want to get out there, find anybody to talk to. They don't need to be a professional, right? We're just regular folks who came together, brought our skill sets together, and ended up coming up with something better than any of us could do on our own. So Tom's a great guy to work for. It's a great company to work for. And I think it shows in the games that we produce. We're all very happy with the end product.
Well, and me and Sam were talking before we started recording. I think you hit on a good point. You guys, I don't say regular guys. You're obviously not just regular guys, but you're not. This isn't your first job. This is not what you know. Tom, you know, you're in the military. Sam, you said a psychology. I'm going to get this wrong. Psychology.
That's okay. I was a philosophy professor before, but now I work in healthcare.
So I think that the talking to you guys, I think that's Sam. Good point. You can do it. You got to get help. Don't try to do it by yourself. But you guys are motivating me. You know, I run a shop. It's my second job, but you know, it's very motivating and to see the success of, hey, us regular guys can go out there and do great stuff. And, you know, if you have a dream, Tom, you can make it happen. You may need help, and you bring in people like Sam and other professionals, if you will, or guys that are really good at their job, you can make it happen. So
it's that's a real good point. And, you know, it's everyone has their reasons for why they get into this industry and this hobby. And I will just say that, to borrow from Simon Sinek, those Canadians, they're everywhere. But he basically says, that you got to figure out what your why is. And if you figure out what your why is, the rest is going to be easy. And what I can tell you, what we all have in common, hopefully I can say this for Sam, and I can say this for Nick, is we're not going to make a lot of money. We're not going to get famous. We're not going to make a lot of friends doing this. In the end, it's really about, we're to borrow from Stephen King, we're just enriching people's lives. And that's what we get a chance to do, an opportunity to do every day. And we don't come to that page with anything other than a lot of seriousness and trying to enrich people's lives every day. And it's I think hopefully we've done that with Unforgiven.
Well, I think you guys have, and once again, I appreciate your time. I know Sam had just done another interview and came and turned around and did this one. And Tom, I know you're a busy person, and I appreciate you guys' time. Any last parting comments? Check out the Kickstarter page when I post the link, right?
Yeah, we got the shameless plugs, of course, but I do want to say thank you. Yeah, as you mentioned, it's been a busy little while getting things ready, but it's all in service of what Tom says, right? We're trying to get this out there so that people can find something that makes them happy, right? This is the perfect game for the right sort of people. Whether you are a historical buff, if you're really into Lincoln and you know all of these people and you'll recognize them and you'll appreciate the depths and the research that we've done, this is for you. Or if you're just a gamer, if you want a nice, tight, head-to-head two-player dueling game and you didn't really have any interest in the Lincoln Assassination before, this is still your game, right? It's a solid playing game with great history. It'll appeal to a lot of people, and we think it'll bring a lot of worlds together.
Sounds great. Appreciate once again you guys' time, and we'll get this out so people can watch it. So.
Mine eyes have seen the glory of